Well, thank you very much for having me. My name is Hayley McQueen, introduced. Yes, I work for Sky Sports News. I didn't actually go to college or university in Manchester. I actually started life here. I was born in St Mary's Hospital in the centre of town and began my path of education at a primary school in Cheshire. So I have very strong links to Manchester. My dad also played football. He played for Manchester United. I'll tell you a little bit more about that in a minute because it's sort of relevant to what I do. I worked in Manchester 20 years after I was born here. I worked for Manchester United television. I've got some stories about that as well for the boys and the girls who I know love football. I'm not being sexist. Reading out loud sports stories on the hour over and over and over again is pretty much my job. And normally I stand now. Some of you have seen the new studios. It's a nightmare. You have to shave your legs every day and wear high heels. You can't just hide behind a desk, sometimes in jeans and your Ugg boots trying to be comfortable. So it's great that I've actually got faces here and people. Normally I just chat to a camera. Today's not about me, but I'd like to chat to you a little bit about my career and my role and what I do and how I got there, because it was a journey, and one day I was like you, sat in a giant hall just thinking, oh my God, what on earth am I going to do next? So huge congratulations to all of you in here today. It really is a great achievement, not just to have got yourself through your various courses, but to have finished and of course here celebrating today. I graduated a very long time ago, over 10 years ago. It takes me back to my days. I went to college in Epsom in Surrey. Back then I was a keen student. And as we all know, the word student gets a little bit of stick. People talk about students as living it up, going out, having fun, sleeping a lot, drinking a lot, socializing more than most. And that, to a certain extent, some of it is true. But the last thing talked about when people discuss students is often a lot of the hard work that's been put in achieving your qualification that you've picked up today. But from now on, you're not a student anymore, you're a graduate, so people will not be able to tar you with that brush and discuss you as a student that just doesn't do an awful lot. You can see from today that you have done an awful lot, and the reason you're here is because you've achieved an awful lot. So really big well done. Now, the path to my current job as a broadcaster has definitely been a bit of a varied one, so hopefully you can draw from some of my experiences and give you a bit of an insight into my story to help you, because I didn't simply walk out of university and go straight into a job. I found it quite hard. Yes, my dad played football. He played for Leeds United and Manchester United, and people see me on Sky Sports and think, oh, that's how she got the job. They don't realise you put the work in. I don't know, if your dad's a plumber, you probably can't turn up at somebody's house and fix the sink. You've got to know how to do it properly. So I know how hard it can be. I know how hard you've worked, and I know how hard it can be now when you're applying for jobs, you're in debt, you're slightly excited about the future, but you're a little bit concerned as well and scared about entering into the big wide world of work. But you're really, really lucky right now because you get to choose what you do. You get to explore and you can choose wisely. It's a bit like having a boyfriend, isn't it? You get many choices over the way. Some of them are absolutely awful. I've had a few of those. You're probably not going to end up with the one that you started out with in sixth form. It's a little bit like that with jobs. You will end up finding the one, but it might just take a little while. Okay, so those of you that know me, as I've said, I sit behind a desk and read out news. Good news, bad news, a lot of it is fun. I work in sport. It's entertainment. It's great. I'm very lucky. I spent 4 years working with Manchester United television. I got to live and work in the greatest city in the world ever. I got to report and interview on some of the greatest sportsmen ever. That's right, I had to sit down and interview Sir Alex Ferguson, the first ever time I'd interviewed the manager of this great football team when they got knocked out of the League Cup against Coventry back in, I think it was 2006, 2007. I was absolutely petrified. This is my first big, real, proper job, and I'd worked at MUTV for about 6-7 months, and I was being sent out to interview the boss. It's okay, it's a League Cup game, you'll be absolutely fine. I wasn't. It was awful. I used to report on reserve football as well, so I'd be shoved out to the sidelines at Moss Lane or wherever, and go up to Salford and head off to the various places where Manchester United youth team played football. And one of the stories, and my biggest story, It's a very small quote that someone gave me, and it's something I live my life by now. Fail to prepare, prepare to fail. I turned up at this game. I had to do the team news. Now, when you're dealing with these young football players, I don't know who on earth half of them are. They don't have their names written on the back. So I had to sit there scribbling down formations, trying to work it all out, wondering what on earth was going on. And Brian McClare, for a generation here, knew that he played for Manchester United and works in the academy now. And he came over and I said, Brian, Chalky, can you just help me out? I just need a bit of help with the formation of the opposition. I think they were playing Manchester City. I was like, I'm struggling here. I was like, I can't find a pen. He just looked at me and he just went, you can't find a pen and you don't know the opposition. He's like, fail to prepare and prepare to fail. And he just walked off. That was it. I had to get an interview with him post-match and he didn't turn up for it. So I learnt my lesson there. But anyway, those are just a couple of little stories from my life. But I actually started my higher education doing a foundation course. It was a one-year course followed by a BA Honours degree. In sixth form, I actually didn't have a clue what I wanted to do. Until a few years ago, I was still wondering what on earth it was I was going to do. I had a mixture of A's, B's, and a few C's thrown in at GCSE. I got an average A-levels. I didn't ever really excel, but I worked really, really hard. I loved sport. I had a dad that played football. I thought maybe I'll go and work in there at some point, but I was like, no, I'm going to set out on my path. I'm going to go and study art and design. Did that for 1 year. Ended up quitting because I realized I couldn't draw, I couldn't paint, I wasn't very creative, I was just frankly useless, but my parents wouldn't let me take a gap year. It was, no, you've got to study something. I just didn't know what I wanted to do. After that, I did end up going and studying in Epsom, as I mentioned, and specialized in journalism. I graduated back in 2002. My mum and dad came along. It was in Guildford Cathedral. And it was a really big day for me, like you, sat there in a cap and gown, really excited. I'd worked really hard for 3 years. My dad at the time was a pundit on Sky Sports, and I had a bit of a nightmare. Rio Ferdinand decided to sign for Manchester United from Leeds United on the day of my graduation. Like, okay, well, what's the link here? Well, my dad played in the same position as Rio Ferdinand. He was a number 5 and made the jump from Leeds United to Manchester United, who were massive rivals at the time. And a Sky Sports truck turned up at my graduation and took my dad down a road and interviewed him live on television. This stupid sports channel that I didn't really have much interest in back then. It had only just started up. It was going to ruin my day. Rio Ferdinand ruined my graduation. It's kind of funny how it works out. All these years later, I am now working for that stupid channel. And I've interviewed Rio Ferdinand on many occasions and told him about that story. So I have been lucky enough to have interviewed people like him, Sir Alex Ferguson, the lovely Ronaldo. As well, he was lovely, he was very nice, he made tea. David Beckham as well, he looks and smells as gorgeous as you would imagine. He does, it's great. I've stood on a stage with him about this far away, he even gave me a kiss, one of the highlights of my career. So telling you a little bit about my journey, that was my graduation day. The first job I ever got was working for Granada for This Morning. It was on the South Bank, not in Manchester. It was my first job. I then worked for Borough TV in Middlesbrough. Glamorous. It was a cable television football channel. And then I worked for the Football in the Community scheme, delivering educational programs to lots of kids. I got headhunted and worked for Sky Sports for a year in 2006. I was absolutely hopeless, didn't want to be a TV presenter. I decided to leave and move to Manchester and become a reporter. I decided what I was going to do at the ripe old age of 26. I'd kind of figured it out. I'm now back at Sky Sports, having worked at MUTV for 4 years. It was supposed to be a loan deal. Sky were like, oh, we'll send her away, she'll pick up a bit of experience. But of course, the team were doing brilliantly. They were winning the leagues, they were in the Champions League. So I spent 4 years there. I also do bits of work for the FA now, and in between there, I was made redundant from Borough TV and worked for the FA. So I have had many, many, many jobs. It's varied. And I'm sure a lot of you will actually probably end up doing the same. You might not end up working in your chosen field. And choice is actually a really important word because you can choose what you want to do now. And guess what? You can even change your mind. So for people like me, it might be a little bit too late at the age of 34 to change my mind on a career. But it is actually okay if you choose your career now and you change your mind. You might have even started your course thinking you knew what you wanted to do. You graduate and thinking, oh my God, I don't want to do this anymore. Well, luckily, you have that qualification. You are armed with something really precious. Whatever it is you want to do, you can change your mind, and you have this precious bit of paper which will become hugely, hugely important. I mentioned I've worked in lots of different jobs, falling into the one that best suited me. The one thing I did do, though, was apply for roles within companies I wanted to work for. And this is really, really important, because once you have an in, no matter what job it is that you have within that company, you can see all the other different jobs. So I worked for This Morning in the fashion department. I didn't want to be a stylist. I didn't want to work in wardrobe. I actually still didn't really know what I wanted to do. I had this honours degree in, it was PR marketing and journalism, specialising in journalism. Realised I was never going to work for Elle or Vogue or Tatler or Grazia, because I just wasn't good enough and it didn't suit me. There were people on my course who were doing better than me. I was quite good at standing up and talking about what I wanted to do, but not actually doing it. You're thinking, no, she doesn't. She's absolutely hopeless. She's just rambling on at us about nonsense that we don't even need to know about. But I'm here to try and just give a little bit of advice. When I worked at This Morning, I babysat the guests that would come in. I sent clothes back. I made tea. I looked after guests. I collected posts. I sent clothes back. I took care of the models. I was literally a runner, and I did that for 8 months. A friend of mine who graduated from the same course as me did the very same. She got a first-class BA Honours degree in journalism and worked for Jeremy Kyle for 2 years. She's now actually a senior sports presenter and works for CNN and TalkSport. I have another friend who worked on a reception in a radio station for 2 years, and now she's a documentary producer. So it just kind of goes to show, maybe the first job that you get, if you don't feel like it suits you, you don't need to panic. There will be something else out there. And the first job you get will possibly just lead you on to other things and take you to that path, to that perfect job. But when I worked in television, I got to see all the different roles. I got to see editors working, floor managers, producers, set designers, hair and makeup department, wardrobe. So I will say, if you're not quite sure what you want to do, look at a company that you quite fancy working for and apply for a job role within that specific company, and just never give up. You'll need a lot of patience as well. So I said you will probably not land your perfect job. You might be in your perfect role, but working as a junior. You will always work your way up. When I first screen tested at Sky, I mentioned I was working at Middlesbrough Football Club, and I'd been sent down to Sky Sports. My dad was working there. I was like, this is great. I didn't want to be a presenter. I thought I might want to get into reporting, writing sports stories, because writing was my strength, sport was my knowledge. I did a screen test. I had to read out the Sri Lankan cricket team. That, by the way, if you just look that up when you get back home, it's pretty, I don't know if anyone in here is from Sri Lanka or follows cricket, but that was pretty tough. We had to ad-lib our way through an awful lot of stuff. And there was a young boy that was looking after me, this tiny little kid. He was a runner, and bringing me tea, doing my screen test. I got on a free Sky bus, back to the tube, headed up north, thought, oh well, I've had a go at cutting it as a presenter. Maybe they'll get me in and work in production. Maybe I'll even get to work as a reporter. Presenting was just that little bit too far away. It was a bit unrealistic, I guess. This young man ran after me on the bus on the way back to the tube and was like, you've got to come back to Sky, the boss wants to see you. I sat down, had a conversation, signed a contract and joined up with Sky Sports for a year back in 2006. As I mentioned, I wasn't very good. I was just sat there reading out the autocue and thought, God, I spent 3 years at university working really hard, running after people at This Morning, worked as a production coordinator for Borough TV, and now I'm just reading out other people's work through the night from midnight till 6 in the morning. This is hopeless. Now, of course, I'm working there as one of the senior anchors on Sky Sports, and the young man that ran after me, that was the runner on that day, is now one of my co-presenters. So he started there and worked his way up through that journey. He's called Tom White. So I mentioned that loan deal at MUTV ended up lasting 4 years. I now have one of the jobs on Sky Sports where I present main studio games for the Champions League. I've been out working on the FA Cup, the League Cup, and I finally paid off my student loan. It took me till I was 30 years old to pay off my student loan. My best friend, who is a makeup artist, and some of you in here have also studied that, she was earning more than me. I was like, how can I be a presenter? And this friend of mine, this makeup artist, is earning more money than me. But forget about money, forget about what you could potentially be earning in your first job, just forget about that. I wasn't earning any more than 20 grand until I got to about 26, but this is going back a few years, so that's okay. I mentioned that I had a rough idea that I wanted to study journalism, perhaps write for fashion and lifestyle magazines. Didn't know what I wanted to do in sixth form. Did that foundation course because I was interested in art. Now, I didn't ever use that foundation course in art and design for 1 year. I left after a year, but I tell you what, it makes a difference on my CV. People are interested in this course that I spent, you know, a lot of hard work doing for a year. I wasn't the most creative people, but that went down. It's a qualification on my CV, and whilst I didn't do anything with it, I'm really proud, just as proud as I was when I got my BA Honours degree. So I went to college to gain a qualification, the first in my family to do so. I'm sure many of you in here might be the first in your families to have gone and got your various qualifications as well, so a huge well done. And Sky and the BBC and lots of other places, non-media related, they actually offer graduate schemes. I know Sky will not take somebody on unless they have entry-level foundation degree. So you've already set yourself apart from thousands of other people up and down the country who are leaving sixth form who haven't got that. And you are at the moment in one of the best cities in Europe, Manchester. So as far as media is concerned, it really is only going to get bigger and better. And creatively, for music and the arts as well, and you've got Liverpool down the road and London, which is where I am, isn't all that scary. This speech doesn't go on for too much longer, I promise you. I am rambling on, and maybe my job isn't something that you want to go and do, be a TV presenter, but it's not what I wanted to do either. I kind of fell into it. At Sky, where I work, we have creative teams, production teams, press officers, there's a gallery, there are new students coming in all the time, fresh out of colleges and unis, with exciting new ideas. You out there are genuinely better educated than a lot of people who are already in those jobs. You'll be more educated and more current, certainly, than me. And people are looking for people like you, particularly at places like Sky and the BBC. We look to you when you come into our companies for these fresh, new ideas. You're far more advanced than us as well in terms of technology. You're going to go out there in the world, and people are actually genuinely going to listen to what you have to say, and they will. You do have the power to make a difference in your line of work, and people all the time really see that happening, particularly with where I work at Sky. So these new, fresh graduates, you guys out there, the fresh meat, are being grabbed at places like Sky because we're desperate to have new people coming in. And you'll learn from those that you work with within the companies, from my colleagues and people like me, but we certainly learn an awful lot from you guys coming in. And the world really is your oyster right now. You're at a very specific time of age, an age where you can, in fact, follow all your dreams. I read a quote, "Your age is still an age of exploration." And I think you can go out there and you can explore and you can do anything that you want. The jobs I've had leading up to the job I do now, I was skint when I left university. I had to move home. It was awful. I lived in Middlesbrough, not a very glamorous place, but it was near where my family were from. I worked in the gallery as a production assistant. I was counting down the presenters, organising timings of interviews, booking guests, booking cameramen, sorting out parking, booking commentators. I was basically a production coordinator. And I did this for 3 years after I'd worked for This Morning, pretty much making tea for a good old year. I was nowhere near being a presenter or journalist. I did an awful lot of things. I wouldn't have actually got the chance to do all those jobs if I'd gone in straight at Sky, the BBC, ITV, Channel 4, wherever else. And every single person that I worked with in my first job now is working in the industry, but in a different role. One of our guys who I worked with was a graphic designer. He now heads up the whole of the graphics department at BT Sports. Barney Francis is the head of Sky Sports. He started out as a production junior at Sky. The head of football, someone I worked with alongside in my first ever job as a sub-editor and when I was working at MUTV, now heads up the whole of the football department at Sky. So every single person that is above me started alongside me and at the level that I was at below me. So I know I'm standing here rambling on at you, and you're probably thinking, okay, I don't want to be a TV presenter, I don't want to work in the media, I don't want to work at Sky or the BBC, but I just want to say You have the chance to make decisions now. And sometimes you leave and you think, okay, I've made this decision, I'm working in a job. This might not be the job for me for life, but you will get something out of it. I did a little job a while ago, and it was one of those kind of wake-up moments. I was stood in a hall in London, and I was presenting the FA's 150th centenary anniversary celebrations. There was no autocue, there was no script, it was just myself and my co-presenter, Simon Thomas, who worked for Blue Peter. It was live on television, it was in front of an audience as big as this, and along the front row was literally a who's who of football people. Sven-Göran Eriksson, Fabio Capello, David Beckham was there, Michel Platini, Sepp Blatter. And I was thinking, how the hell did I get from running around as a production junior at This Morning, slogging my guts out for years doing not an awful lot, to be in this privileged position, anchoring a live program with some of the biggest names in sport. I presented on stage as well the Samsung official torch launch with its ambassador, who was, of course, David Beckham. So you can imagine I was very excited about that and had a great day, basically building up to all the Olympics. But there's not a chance in hell I'd have felt capable of doing that 10 years ago when I graduated from uni. Not a chance. If you'd have told me that, I'd have been filled with fear. But it really just shows you can do anything if you put your mind to it. But nothing is handed to you and nothing is easy. And it is about the journey from now beyond. No job or no task is too small or beneath you. If you want to get ahead, volunteer to do the things that nobody else wants to do. I didn't want to pick up models' clothes from the floor, make them tea, buy them salads, open the mail, write back to people who thought they were writing to Richard and Judy. Just soak up everything. Learn from the people that you meet. Be open and just soak up everything. You will take something from even the menial jobs. My friend right now, she's a senior makeup artist at Sky Sports. She had worked for the BBC for many years. She does all the makeup at the Sports Personality Awards. She started out just by blogging, putting stuff on Instagram, set up her own little business. She was working on a counter in Boots for 3 years doing makeup, and now she's earning an awful lot of money in a really high role within Sky. Take your risks now as well. I can't take risks now. It's a little bit too risky. As you grow older, you actually become a little bit more fearful. If I could go back, I definitely wouldn't change anything. I've had some highs and had some lows. I've had some terrible jobs, great jobs. I've worried about what I was going to be doing when I got made redundant. It isn't a fairy tale, but I definitely wouldn't change anything. Maybe, pick a few boyfriends more wisely, save a bit more money, invest in things, but everything happens for a reason. I got my degree not knowing that I would be standing up here, invited back as a guest to ramble on about my football stories, which many of you probably aren't interested in, but you will have your own interests that you will go on to. I love football and I love sport, and I'm really lucky. I get to chat about sport all day, every day. Yes, I work on awful things, dealing with the Oscar Pistorius case. That's been really hard to deal with. I was on air the morning that Gary Speed sadly took his life. That was really hard. So you have these lows within every job, but you have your highs as well. And whilst that was my chosen path, you will have yours as well. So I wouldn't change a thing. I might come back to Manchester and get to be in college here instead of London, where I was getting myself into an awful lot of debt. But you really are in a really truly privileged position. So remember, nothing is unrealistic at all. Just enjoy your day, enjoy yourselves, enjoy celebrating your achievements. I know that you've worked really hard. Maybe try and take a little something away from my speech. I don't know. Maybe some of you won't. But just enjoy everything you do. You work hard at university, and people say, oh God, the real hard work starts now. It does, but you know what? It just gets more fun. Every job I've ever had, I've had fun. And you're not entering into a workplace with a load of old men these days in suits where you sit at a desk and worry about, stepping on eggshells. You're out there in a world with lots of other really interesting, exciting, creative people. You'll be starting jobs with others who've left different colleges and universities with different qualifications and making new friends and new journeys. And really, I thought university would be the best time of my life, but I would probably have to say the jobs I've had since university, whilst it's been hard work, have been some of the best years of my life. So thank you very much for having me. I will be quiet now. It's very hot in here, I am aware. So thank you.
Thank you, Hayley, for that fascinating insight into the trials and tribulations. OK, folks, on to the main event. We're going to welcome up the students course by course, and we're going to ask Lisa O'Loughlin, our Vice Principal, and we're going to start with Julia Granger, our representative from